Hey there, welcome to the Healthy Vibes podcast. Today on the podcast, I have a super intriguing interview with Rachel Swanson. She's an author turned real estate investor, and she takes us along on her entire journey from how it started, how it's going, and all the in-betweens. It's so interesting, and she really opens up her book and tells us so much. So if you have any interest, please sit back and listen up. Here we go. All right, Rachel, thank you so much for being here today on our podcast. I'm so excited to have some time with you.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Kelly.
Absolutely. Um, I love your path and your journey, and I've been following you for a long time. But I would love for you, in your own words, to kind of maybe just tell the audience a little bit about kind of where you were and how you've gotten to where you are now, just a little bit to lay the groundwork for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, again, I'm just honored. I mean, not everybody will always follow people through all the transitions, especially when sometimes you have one kind of passion or thing that you're doing, and then you transition to something that sounds pretty different, right? And yet, I love that you continue to follow along, and it's something that you also are very interested in. It sounds like so. Yeah, my story, my history. I mean, first and foremost, I was I guess it go back to career wise, but I was a dental hygienist for like 7 years. My husband and I got married 17 years ago. I have 3 kids. My twin boys are 11. I almost said the wrong name, or wrong year. I'm like, no, they're 11 now.
Okay.
And my daughter is 10. So I smashed them in. And once they were little, like once they were born, and after I had my daughter, that's when I really started to get into, back in the day, like the blogging space. That was like back in 2011 to 2016. I was really engaged in writing, and I never really thought of myself as a writer, to be honest. It was just something I think I just started sharing and hoping that it would connect with some people, or just almost kind of like a journaling type of thing initially. And then it just kind of grew and blossomed into a writing career where I launched a best-selling book. It was crazy. It was called Big and Little Coloring Devotional. And so it's like where you sit with your kids and you do devotions and color. And it was really just birthed out of my own desire for something like that. And I looked, and there wasn't anything out there like that. So, I created it, and it was great. And then it led to several other book contracts, and all of a sudden just kind of launched me into this world where I was online and doing writing and speaking. And then I started like a coaching program for writers. And so, yeah, it just kind of took a life of its own, right? And so I was doing that and continuing to think that this is what I'm going to do. And it was doing really well, even up until about 2018. That's when we felt like, okay, maybe we can, do this where my husband could pull back from his career. Now, at that time, for the last couple of years before that, my husband had been really in a very successful career. He even still was up until 2018, but he was feeling a lot of burnout. He was just really struggling to stay motivated. The stress of the job was just really getting to him. We lived in the Southern California area, and things are really expensive there, So it's one of those, we just really relied on his income. But when we started to think through, okay, mental health obviously is so important. And I want my husband to have joy, and I want him to enjoy what he's doing. And we were really considering, okay, you need to have a change of careers. But we knew if he did that, we would definitely not be able to afford to live where we were. So at that time, we started to consider moving, to a either cheaper area of California, or even now moving out of state. And at the time, then my business was growing so well and doing so well that I was like, you know what? I think we can do this. We did have some savings, so we weren't just like pulling the plug and had no parachute to help us, but because I wouldn't recommend that. But so we did decide in 2018, okay, we're going to make a big shift. And he quit his job, kind of taking in a sense, so it was going to be like a leave of absence, but then it just was, he was like, no, let's just do this. We got an RV. There was a lot of things moving and shifting at the time. Like we were thinking we were going to be traveling around the country in an RV and all these different things. And then sure enough, it was just kind of like God led us to this opportunity in Idaho, in a rural town outside of Boise. And so I thought, okay, I think this is it. So we moved to this small town in Idaho. And my husband had quit his job. I was doing full-time my writing, speaking, that sort of thing. And it was doing great. And in 2019, I did that. And he was taking over doing Mr. Mom a lot. And then also helping with this kind of business partnership adventure that we were pursuing at that time. And unfortunately, things just really started to fall apart when it came to that opportunity. And by the end of 2019, also my business was really starting to, there was a few things showing signs that I was like, I think it's not doing as well. And but I just kept pushing, as well as I was really on the verge of burnout myself. I think I created a business that I didn't realize was so much harder. Like I was literally putting 80 plus hours a week. I was always gone in the evenings doing coaching and not being able to connect with my kids or my husband. And I started to look back and I thought, what did I just do? Like, what did I create for myself? Like, I thought I was creating this path where we were going to have more breathing room and I could pursue my passion. And what was initially a passion became something that just felt like it was not what I anticipated to be, you know.
Gotcha.
And it really became this burden. You know, passion became the burden. And so then when 2020 hit, I was literally just about to launch something, and the world shut down. You know?
Oh, yes.
And it was like, oh my gosh. And I had a book that I was already pitching with publishers, and they put everything on hold. They're like, we're not doing any contracts. And all my speaking engagements got canceled. Like everything got canceled. Thankfully, a few months before that, my husband did kind of feel like, you know, I'm feeling like I need to go back to work. I think I could go to the same company, but it's a different position. I'm basically demoting myself twice. And he's like, I kind of liked this idea or this kind of avenue of this department, which I think it could be good. And it would give us a little more stability. And he's like, I just like the idea of going back to work a little bit. And I said, okay, I think that's good. So we did that, not knowing that in a few months, my business was going to fall apart. And so thank the Lord, really, that we did have that job, because it's what kind of kept us afloat. Although at that time, you know, I still, like, there was a lack of obviously income. And I mean, we did rely on having a little bit of that extra income. Even with his job, we still needed a little bit of extra. And long story short, that's when we kind of became accidental landlords. So that's where it started to morph into this real estate journey and real estate business. And it's where, you know, we are today, just in a place where now I've heard my husband, and, you know, he doesn't have to work in his career anymore. We make more money than we did before and way less hours, which is amazing. But in order to get there, it really was this instance where we actually, after we moved to Idaho for you know, that next year, so we went to Idaho. We didn't have a house initially. We thought we were going to be in the RV, but that wasn't going to work out. So we bought a house. It wasn't like a forever house. I don't even like that word anymore, like your forever house.
Right.
I don't really know if that's ever going to happen. Because I sold my forever house that was in California. So I was like, you know, so we bought a house that I knew, I was like, okay, this is a good area. It looks pretty good. And the other thing, side note, my husband, he's always been very good at putting sweat equity into all of our homes. And we've always just enjoyed, you know, making them nicer, making them more functional, just, you know, adding some updates. So to us, that was very much what we just always have done. So this next one, it was like, okay, it just needs like a little facelift in the kitchen and a few other things, some paint, whatever. We can make this nice. And so we bought that one. And then in a year later, about 12 months later, that's when I was like, oh no, this is the one I want. Like, I saw another house and I really wanted it. And it really did feel like another, like so many instances. I know I'm not saying this enough, but there were so many instances, like God instances of just God leading in this and confirming and just lining up things where I'm like, okay, I really believe this is where God's leading. And same thing with this next house. It just felt like God was leading. I had this, it was really big. I had a finished basement that also had a kitchenette, which we were able to add like a full kitchen down there. And we rented that out because there was a family that had moved and it was coming into the December or like the cold season, right? And I mean, in Idaho, if you're in an RV in the freezing, it's like you have to really prepare. And they were having issues with their water and issues with like their heat and we just really felt kind of put it on. I mean, we didn't even know them that well, but we just felt like, I feel like God's telling us to bring them in. I mean, we'd still charge a rent, but maybe rent out the bottom half for now, which could help us also financially, right? So
Right.
we bought this house, but the other thing we also did is we were trying to sell the other one that we were living in, and it was not selling. And there was no reason it should have not sold. Like everybody loved it, and we're just like, why is it not selling? And so sure enough, I was like, well, maybe there's a way we can just hold on to it and rent it. So we did that. We pulled some money out, did a special loan, which is called a HELOC. It's like a home equity line of credit, pulled out the money that we needed at the time to put down, on our new home. And we rented out the other one. And between that one and the people below, over the next couple months, I started realizing, oh, we're making like an extra $1,500 a month. And it's like pretty easy, right?
Right.
Just these easy tenants and easy, whatever. I thought, wow, this is pretty interesting. And that's again, when 2020 hit, my whole like business fell apart. And at that time, I felt like God was saying, there's gonna be a major pivot. And for the next several months, actually, after that, until the end of 2020, I was really just taking some time. I mean, first of all, I was processing as well as like all of a sudden my kids were home and I'm like having to, do the virtual program, school, like all that stuff. So I was very much needed in the home front. And so having though that extra 1,500 was crucial because we definitely needed that to kind of keep things afloat. Then by the end of 2020, after seeing some of these, the income, and I was just like, and then also seeing how much the equity of our home had already been growing. And now with 2 homes, it had been growing in the area. And I thought, I wonder if there's something to this real estate thing and rentals. And that's when I started to deep dive into learning all I needed to know about rental real estate. And my mind was literally blown. Like I started reading about all these people and about understanding just how really wealthy people become wealthy as well as stay wealthy. And there's certain things in that I thought, there's something to this. I think there's something for us in this. And side note, some people have different opinions about wealth and money and all those things, especially if you're like a believer and a Christian. And some people are like real nay about some of that kind of stuff. And I want to challenge you to really read what the Bible has to say about it, because there is actually so much about money and wealth and things like that in the Bible when it comes to what God teaches and what he wants us to do as followers of Christ. And so now, and one thing just on a side note, of that is that my belief and what I understand the Bible to say is that, it's all about the heart of, where your heart is with money. Money itself is not good or bad. It has to do with the person that's involved. I know many Christians, many amazing Christians that have a ton of money and ton of wealth, and they do incredible things with it, right? And anything you do, I mean, even churches and programs that you see, like they would not be functional, like sex trafficking, programs, like they would not be functional if it wasn't for some sort of amount of money that they get from others, to pay into that. So the way that our society and our world works is to really have and promote even a lot of the good things, not everything, right? But like so many of the things that are good do require money. And what would be a better way than to, if you feel like this was really your path and you felt called by God to pursue things that can generate even more money so you can be even more generous and continue to grow his kingdom in that way. So we continue to feel that call and our yeah, and we felt like that was also the path that God just really opened to us for like through real estate investing because we did not try to pursue it ourselves. I really feel like it was just given to us and was like, okay, let's do this. So once we did that, then it was like I really started to dive head in. And I mean, I could get into all the nitty gritties. I think there's a lot more if I could share with that. But in general, we just started to figure it out. You just you start reading books and podcasts and learning what these other people were doing when it came to rentals and real estate. And again, one of the big things we really wanted to do as well as landlords, we really wanted to make sure that we were good landlords, that we were providing safe, wonderful places for people to live and that we were not the slumlords a lot of people think about.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, I know there's those out there, but I was like, what if we can be be somebody that's like, we can be something different. And sure enough, I mean, I can't tell you how great of relationships I have with my tenants and how, I mean, so many of them have been like, you guys are so different. Like you guys have treated us with so much more respect. You guys are always on top of things when it comes to anything that's, breaks. We get people out there right away. We're very intentional. And I feel like this is important for this space is to have more people that come into this space with rentals and real estate that have that kind of heart and really want to change and make a difference in those ways.
There's so much, and I don't even want to interrupt you, but
No, go for it.
there's so much to this story that is good, and I don't want to like miss. I love these side notes that you started because I think that's so huge. The looking beyond the black and white, or just the investing of how you're doing good in the world.
Absolutely.
And how you're being called. I love stories of following God's calling because I do feel like it's there, and these are things we pray about and we hope for, but do we always follow them? Because many times it's a different path. It's not the path we were planning. It's not the traditional path. And so I go back to the beginning. I love that you switched your path when it was placed in front of you, and I love you're finding ways to make the kingdom better by your path. And so those are side notes. So thank you for sharing that. And even the side note about the Bible and money and wealth. And that does make me want to go dive in and look more to look at that. So good. Let me ask you, because what you've described, I know you've come a long way since where you just paused right there.
Sure.
But sounds like you started with long-term rentals, correct?
I did. So we knew the area itself was more prime for long-term rentals, and that was just what we felt more comfortable with. And it really didn't have a great short-term or, I don't know, midterm. It was fine if you're closer to the city, but we were literally looking at our small town of Emmett, Idaho. And there really isn't it's a bit much bigger demand for rentals in that area. And so that was just an area that we saw there was a need, as well as we felt like we could fulfill. And so I started, acquiring. I started with my first little junky little property. I mean, literally, we scraped together. We had like basically the little bit of left of our savings after we had depleted so much of it from the move and before and anyways. But so we had like $45,000, and we're like, okay, we can put this in something and it can start cash flowing a little bit, and that can be our start. And I started running numbers, and I saw this one, and it was just this 1920s craftsman style falling apart. Probably like really, it wasn't it was okay. It was livable. It was definitely livable, and it wasn't like disgusting or anything. But it was old, right? It was really in good shape for how old it was. It was in good shape, but our hope was to like remodel it and all that stuff. But anyways, we got that one and got it rented right away. And
That's
sure enough, it was like at any moment, if anything big broke, we probably would not have been cash flowing very like at all on that one for the year. But God kind of gave us grace, I feel like, with that first one. And while it barely cash flowed, it did, right? But it got us started and it gave us the confidence to then move into the next thing, which was the thing that really significantly changed our financial situation. Which I can go into that if you're ready, or if you wanted to ask another question about that.
was the one you just described in the same area you were in?
Yep. It was just 10 minutes from our house in
Okay.
like the downtown, close to downtown. And yeah, we just, we started to manage it ourselves. I decided, if I'm already going to be managing this and managing our rentals, we didn't have a good property management company in the area. There was one major one and it was pretty terrible. So we didn't want them to manage it. And we thought, you know what, let's just do it ourselves. It'll save more money. We can learn the process. And then through that, I was like, well, I may as well manage a few others if anybody else, wants me to. So I don't even know how they found me. I think they found me through Google online because I created like a little Google business, for
Right.
management. And these people just found me and they called me and I answered their questions. I told them what I could do. And again, like I'm one of those, just I guess I'm a natural researcher and I love to learn. And I will just and I'm one of those, I'm not afraid to just, okay, we'll figure this out. So even as they call me and, I'm double checking and trying to see what other property management companies do and their contracts. And then I'm, creating all that and figuring it all out. And, I made a lot of mistakes, but that's how you learn. Right. And,
Absolutely.
yeah, so we started doing that. And then we made our next major purchase. And that was really through the equity of our home, which a lot of us, maybe if you've had your home for several years, you
Right.
have some built-in equity, which is, what it's worth now. And it's worth more money now. And you have some money sitting in there that you could potentially use to leverage into other rental properties. And while, yes, if you use that money and use a loan and, get debt to put on that and put into something else, those payments will make it kind of go up. The goal is to put it into something else. And even with the next property, you can still bring in more money that covers the debts and gives you some extra. And that's the
Gotcha.
whole goal.
Okay.
And
Is that kind of how you started into this next big step?
yep. So the property that we have bought um almost 2 years prior to that, like the one that we were renting out at the bottom half initially for the first year. And then that next year, we didn't have them anymore. But and then we finished out, how we wanted the house. We were using the whole house. But, that extra little bit went away and we're like, like maybe we need to get some, get another thing. So at that time, actually, we did a refinance because, again, might be a little different now. You have to get more creative. The interest rates were really low at the time. So we were able to refinance at like a 3.25%, which is
Nice.
pretty low.
Yeah.
And while our payments did go up by about $800 a month, we reinvested it into a property that, even with the new loan on that one, we were earning an extra $3,000 a month.
Nice.
Yes, once it was stabilized. So obviously, if you do the math, you're still making extra money and it's great. And you're building equity and the tenants are paying down the loan and everything's all good. Now, when it comes to debt, we are not a huge fan of credit card debt. I think you have to use that very wisely. But when it comes to real estate, we do feel like that is again, you got to be careful not to over leverage and you got to be wise with it. But we do feel like, and there's places in the Bible where it looks like God even talks about being careful with debt, but he never says like you cannot get into debt, like when it comes to these types of things. He just says be careful because that can be a burden. And yeah, it can be. And it definitely is if you're not doing it right. So, our whole goal is to make sure always we get into rentals that cover everything plus gives us an extra cushion and extra cash flow. And that's how you do it well. That's how you do it right. That's how it's also tied to tied to an actual physical asset, right? So
Right.
worst case scenarios, we always look at like, okay, how like if this doesn't work out or we're not doing well, could we still sell it and pay off the loan and still not like, go under or whatever. And yeah, those are always the things that you need to think through when it comes to real estate and leveraging debt and those sorts of things. But yeah, so we pursued this unique property where we converted a an assisted living home into what's considered like a co-living community, which is basically like you're renting out by the room. And so in that area, so this was actually closer to Boise, and we could see that there was a much stronger need, especially because that area itself has got, even now, it's just gone up. And like the housing over there has gone up so much. It's really created an affordability issue for most people. And we could see that there was a lot of need for some affordable rentals in the area. But of course, we didn't want to provide like a junky place. But we thought, okay, well, there's got to be another process or way or setup that we can make this be a win-win where, we can provide a nice place to live and keep the affordability down for them, but still make, the money that we need. And that was the co-living kind of design. It was crazy. I mean, we were able to, even people were like, wow, like, how is this only this much? Like they were renting out individual rooms. Yes, we created like a shared double kitchen. We expanded it out a little bit. And it was like 9 people lived there and they all had their own bathrooms except for a couple had to share, and we dropped the rent for those. But like, and we as landlords, we were covering all the utilities, everything, and they just paid us a flat rent fee every month that would include all of that. And we were able to make it way less, much more affordable than any other place there. And yes, while they had to be in a shared space, so that's the thing that they were kind of sacrificing, a little bit of a shared space. They were able to get an affordable rent, with it all built in compared to any other place. And it was really nice. It wasn't like a junky place. It was, nice fresh paint, nice countertops, nice, like all that stuff. Everything was good. So we did that. And again, the benefit for us was we then were able to cash flow higher than most properties than you would have. And then we even converted a few. That's even when we started to dabble into midterm and kind of short-term rentals. Midterms is like monthly rentals. And so at the time, again, that was a little bit post-COVID, but there was still a lot of need in that area for nurses. And so we thought, well, maybe we can convert a few of these into furnished rentals, make even more money, have a nice place, but still affordable for the nurses. So we did that, and it was fantastic. Like we had 3 that we eventually converted, and those nurses would come in for a few months at a time, or working professionals. They always had great things to say, loved it. And it was, again, creating a win-win out of the need, like looking at the need in the community or need around us and saying, how can we make this and meet this need and make it be a win for us as well? So it's finding those win-wins.
Yeah, which is so interesting. I love that you're diversifying into so many different types of properties. And I guess, so 2 questions. First,
Sure.
how do you find your properties? Do you have a certain place you look, things you look for? Or because it's interesting to me that you have one kind, but then you end up with a different kind next. Does that make sense?
Right. Well, I think over time it can kind of change. So, now, so at that time that was, yeah, it was a mix between long term, and then we started doing some of those midterm and kind of short term renting it here and there. But then we did end up moving from Idaho to Texas about a year ago. And in this area of Texas, we just saw that it had a better short term and like corporate midterm type of rental. Long term still can work, but it's much harder, especially with the interest rates being higher now. So we decided to transition to that, as well as because I really enjoyed, once we went into the midterm, like helping nurses and, having a few of those as short-term rentals here and there. I realized how much I really enjoyed that space. We enjoyed the communication with the tenants better. I enjoyed having those furnished, and I enjoyed having the extra cash flow too. It was a little bit nicer. But all in all, we just enjoyed that experience. I enjoyed the hospitality space a little bit more. So, while we did have our long terms, and we still have some long term rentals, we still have them. But we did decide, moving forward, now that we've dabbled into some of these other investment assets, is what they like, asset types, because there's all different types of real estate you can pursue. We started to see how we enjoyed the short term and kind of a midterm, like furnished rental space better than even our long terms. And so when we moved to Texas, it was like, okay, here's this market. I think this is the better market for this type of rental. And so sure enough, we started searching, we were looking, we ended up selling actually that super large, property that was like co-living and all that. We sold that, and wanted to reinvest it into properties close by. Plus, the other reason we sold it was, I'll be honest, a property like that is a little more high touch, meaning you either need to have a stellar property management company that can understand the variabilities with that kind of property and the issues that can come. Like it's almost like there's this like you're creating a very interesting environment because it's shared, right? And so you have to be very intentional about who you pick and make sure that people work well together, right? Because we had a few of those issues, right, where people were not super great, and we had to eventually have them move on. And it was like, it's one of those kind of properties, it was just high touch. So we didn't want to be gone. Like when we were moving to Texas, we were like, okay, I don't really want to own this one from afar. I feel like this is going to be too hard, too much. I think we can also, we made so much money through the equity of that that property.
Gotcha.
Because it was acting like commercial at that point. And with commercial, it's a little different. Like the value of commercial is much different than the value of residential. When it goes into commercial, it's more about the rents, like your overall rent. And then there's like a value that they put in, which is called like a cap rate. And again, I know this is probably like, whoa, what is she talking about? But in general, what it is like they put this value and it's based on those rents. And trust me, like those, if you get those up, it can increase the value like double, triple what it would be residential. So residential, like what they do is with residential, like if you were to sell your house, what they do is they look at comparable properties in your area, square footage, all that. Like they take those comparables. Whereas commercial, it's totally different. They don't take comparable properties. They just take, all right, what are your rents? What's the net cash flow? And let's put what's called a cap rate, which is like kind of a percentage calculator based off of other types of assets in that area. And that increased it so much that we were like, okay, it makes more sense now to sell it, take the funds and put it into something else. So we did that. And that's where you leverage. And so we, you start out small and then you start going into bigger and bigger deals and bigger properties and bigger cash flow. So we did that. We reinvested, bought a few more properties here. Kind of just, exploded last year with
with what we to Texas.
Yes. Yeah.
It seems. Let me pause just a second. So
go for it.
It's like your your path and totally, correct me if I'm wrong, or you're absolutely following where it's leading you, which I love. But also, it's like you're getting to know the market surrounding you. Is that kind of where? Because I feel like a lot of people you talk to, they want to do it, but they're paralyzed. They don't know where to start, what to do. Do I start right next to me? Do I not? If I'm into midterms, but I don't know if my area is. Because I like what you said about liking the space. Because I'll be honest, when I research a lot of this stuff, it's the space that I feel like, well, I'd want to be in that space and make people feel good or I don't want to deal with that. That's not really me kind of thing. But then I think that's not where I am. So where do I go to do that? So where, you know what I mean? So what do you tell the people that are like, well, where do I start? I'm interested. Right. And I think, or if someone says to you, I'm interested in midterms, but I don't know what area to go to or.
Right. Yeah. So first and foremost, I would say, if you can start more locally, like within a 3-hour driving distance, that is most ideal. I think
That's a good tip.
hands-on experience or having the ability to be close enough to where you could go interview and check out a cleaner if you're setting up a furnished rental, or, you know, just understanding again the area or being like within a 2 to 3 hour driving distance, I think is really key. Um, the the benefit of that is the area is a little bit better than probably most, or you can still do out of state. I would highly recommend though, again, you do something out of state where either you have somebody that like, do you have an aunt and uncle that live there? Or, is there a friend? Or is it somewhere you vacation to several times? Having a little bit of that know-how is really important. The reason I say that is because we do have investment properties in different states. And one in particular is we have one in Indianapolis, Indiana. It's those are long-term rentals. It's a duplex. And I just knew like, oh, I heard it was a great area. I went and flew there once to look at the area. And then, several months later, I purchased, a property there. And I will be honest, it's been a lot more difficult with that one because I literally knew nobody. So like I knew nobody there. Vetting out people has been a challenge. And so it's just been more challenging than say the ones where I either had lived in or I had people or somebody at least that I could, understand or know, or even the area itself I knew better. You're always going to have a little more of an upper hand in that front. And then you just, you start small if you want, or, if you have the ability to go bigger, sooner, you can like totally do that. But just start small, try it out and see see where it comes from there. And it's okay to change. It's okay to pivot. Like we pivoted multiple times in our real estate, journey when it comes to, we started with long terms and we were doing this co-living thing. We thought that was going to be the thing we're going to hone in on. And then we're like, no, I don't know if it's like really this. And then we like the furnished rentals. We're like, oh, I like this. And then now it's like short terms. And now we're like, oh, we really like this. And so you might morph and change a few things and that's okay. But in general, you're still going to learn so many skills that are going to roll over into the next one still. Like, it's not like you're going to have skills that don't cross over at all, right, into the other spaces. Like, I still utilize a lot of things I've learned through long terms into my midterms and short term rental spaces. So, yeah,
I love that point of all of that. And back so midterm, and then you've gone to short term with the midterm. Where did you and how did you learn the nursing connection? Because I have heard of that before too. The nursing or the corporate. Like, how did you come upon that connection?
So I just started exploring the needs in different areas, and that's it. Like, you look for where is there a need, is there high demand, and you work to fill it. That is it. It is supply and demand. It is good old economics 101.
Right. Which is right.
And doing the research to find that info is you just got to get online and you Google stuff. You Google news, you Google like different articles, you talk to, maybe give a couple calls to hospitals, see what it is. You start even looking at, if you want to do furnished rentals, look at like Airbnb, put on the monthly rental rate and see what people are renting their monthly rentals for, and double check and make sure that it's the right number that you think it is. That's what you do. You start figuring it out. We started doing it actually even for our first rental before we even put an offer in. So I don't know if this is good or bad. I don't know. It's not a big deal. But at that time we were like, well, not that like I don't like Craigslist at all. But I threw it out there. I was like, well, I know there's a lot. If there's any interest in this as a rental, let me just throw it on Craigslist. I didn't even own that yet, but I didn't even put pictures, but I didn't even put the address. I just said, couple details as far as like square footage, number of bedrooms, what would be, and I put a rent out. And then I just said, okay. And I just put it out there and just was like, okay, we'll see how many responses I get. And sure enough, if you're getting a lot of responses, I'd say at least 5 or 6 in the first 24 hours, you're like, okay, there is a need there. There is enough people that are interested. If it's crickets for like a week, either you're too high or the demand is not enough. So you can really test out even before you decide to move forward. Yeah, to make sure that it's actually going to work out.
So then when you analyze your deals, do you have, is there software programs? Have you created your own? Because I know you have your coaching business, which I definitely want to touch on before we finish. But
No worries.
where do you go in terms of analyzing the deal as to, is this a good deal or not?
Mhm. So that's a combination of different resources, just literally, like I said, in Google, trying to find out what is the, business job growth looking like in that area. What are rent rates? I also, when it comes to short-term rentals, there are some short-term rental kind of calculators out there that can help give you an idea of what the demand is. One's called Rabu. It's RABVU, and the other one's AirDNA, like DNA.com. And there's a few other ones as well. And you can kind of get an idea of whether or not this area is, good for short-term rentals or what the rates are. I will say those tend to be, I think, a little on the lower side. They don't always take into account. A lot of times they'll take into account just the Airbnb bookings and not Vrbo or Booking.com or the additional ones. And so it might be a little bit higher. Plus, again, if you have experience in the area, like if you're closer to that area and you kind of can see and sense what that demand is, or if it's a growing area, which can be really helpful for equity reasons or future equity growth. Those are things that are not always things that you'll find on Google. That's why sometimes having a hands-on approach or understanding your market a little bit, like personally, is a really good idea. But yeah, there's tons of softwares. I have everything. So much of it is automated. So when it comes to the short terms or even long terms, I have automated payments for every single person, even all my long terms. They can do maintenance requests through there. Again, some of these things you can completely hire out with your own property management or with a property manager as well. I just tend to do things all in-house. And so I figure it out and I just set up the systems, and I figure as long as I have a couple rentals, it makes sense for me to just set it up myself. And I tend to be a little bit more of the type of person who's not afraid to figure those things out. If you're like, that's overwhelming, I can't do it, then yeah, get yourself a property manager. It's okay. Double check, make sure the fees, you can pay those, and then away you go. Yeah.
So I like that, though. So with analyzing a property, from what I just gathered from what you said, it's not just about the property. You got to the market, which is so important.
Yeah, I think there's calculators out there, by the way. Like, I never go into a property without doing it. It's a math game. It really is. And you don't have to be good at it too. Like, you don't have to be good at math. you just have to know where to find the numbers and put them all into the spreadsheet that, I have my own customizable one that I've created over the years because I wanted certain things. And so I do that, and I give that to all my coaching people. Anybody who signs up for coaching, I walk them through that too. And then they get at the end. And so it's great. But there's Bigger Pockets also has some rental calculators. There's other resources as well out there. But you put in the numbers and then you see if it works. If it doesn't work, if it doesn't cash flow, like after all the things are in, all the expenses that you put in, then that's not a good deal. And then you either pass, or you have to be like, okay, how can I make this a good deal? What is the price I need to pay to actually make this work? And sometimes you have literally no way. Like I just had a property I looked at. It was a townhouse in our area on the water, on the lake that we live by here. And the guy said that, he owns it outright. He could even do what's called seller financing, which is where I make payments to him, all through title too, is legal, all that kind of stuff. But payments to him. And so he acts like he's the mortgage or the lender. And I put in like a 0% interest at his price point and all, and I couldn't make it even work at 0% interest. Then you're like, well, I don't think this is going to work. Right. So, and for that reason, sometimes you have to pass. Most of the time you can figure out some way to make it work. As far as if it's down to a price, like lowering the price, but most people don't want to lower the price, or, if it's not been on the market long enough, they don't try to do that. But yeah, put in the numbers, see if it works. That way it's not a huge risk, right? Like, you better not be getting into things that you're like, I think it works. It's like, no, I can see this works. I have cushion. I have 5% for reserves, 5% for property, or like 10% for property management, like all those things. If you put them all in and you calculate it all, and it still comes out with a positive number that is a decent enough positive number, you want, at least for long-term rentals, at least an extra $300 to $500 a month, I would say. Short terms, I always look at things that have, $2,000 a month or more. Midterms, I usually try to do at least 800 and up a month, like cash flow. So those are just, again, those are my guidelines because I like to be more conservative. I don't like to keep it tight. But let me just tell you, the very first one I got into, I didn't do a good job. Like, I mean, I'd still work, thank goodness, it still was fine. When we sold it, we doubled our money. So it all worked out. But, you don't want to be so tight where if something like, I don't know, like the water heater breaks and you have to go pay like $1,500 for that. Like, how long is that going to take you to make up after, like, if you're only making $100 a month and that costs, that's going to take you 15 months until, you know what I mean? Till you get that back. So you got to really be careful and make sure you have the reserves in place.
Great tips. And your coaching business, I'm guessing, do people come to you? I'm guessing all walks of where they are in their journey.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm
brand new. Help me. Some are. Okay. Great.
Yeah. From people that are brand new and they're like, I don't know where to start. And I help give them like, okay, like these are the books you should read. This is the stuff you should start learning. You should start analyzing this market then, if that's kind of your interest or whatnot. Some people are like, they really sometimes just need somebody else to tell them, okay, based on what the questions I've asked that person, like really you're answering your own question. I'm the one that's just sifting through it. It's like I'm like a sifter for people. I sift through all of it. I ask them a million questions. And then through the end of it, I'm like, okay, so what I'm hearing is this is what's most important to you. These are the strengths that you might have. This is the amount of budget you have. Like, so based off of all these things, I think this is the best path for you to go on. And these would be your next steps. And and then it's up to them if they decide to, take that next step. That's great. Sometimes I have a lot of like some people actually, there's one gal I've been coaching over the past year and we just keep like, she'll just get on another coaching when she's on like the next step. And, at one point it was just figuring things out, right? The next step was like, okay, lenders was like, how do we figure that out? And then we went into the market and then it was like, okay, she got one and now she's setting it up as a midterm. Like, how do you set it up? So I went through that with her. So, and now she's already at the place where, I mean, she has a renter and it's just great. Like, it's fun to see that process kind of come to fruition. But I will be having additional resources where I'm not going to just be doing one-on-one coaching because I keep that very limited, to be honest, because I'm just mindful of my time, but I want to help. But I will be having additional, like kind of a plug and play resource, like a course in some ways, with additional downloads and resources. But I do have some free stuff as well that I can, send people that.
Yes. I did download your free guide, one of them, cool, which was great.
Wonderful.
So first thing, when do you know when the plug and play or when's your projected timeline for that? That's something you're working on now? Because I figured coaching was limited, which good for you. We should be mindful of our time.
Yes, exactly. That is going to be my goal and my hope is to have it ready by the end of this month. So
wonderful. That's exciting.
8 more weeks. Yes.
So cool. Where can people find you so they could get the free guide, keep up on that?
Instagram is my favorite place. It's Rachel C. Swanson, SWANSON on Instagram. And then you can click my link and it has all my links available as far as like the downloads and coaching. But in the future, I can't guarantee that I'll always have coaching available. But I've wanted to help people and want to get them, started. And so that's just an extra way I can just give people the insight that they need. Sometimes you just need somebody to kind of literally just face-to-face hold your hand through those first initial steps, which are always so scary, and know that you're going to be making the wise decisions. Yeah.
No, it's wonderful. And then they get to learn it themselves and probably build their confidence so that they can keep moving forward. But to have that's a great resource.
Totally.
And I feel like I know I want to be mindful of your time today as well. So I know I'm going to wrap this, all of that ways to find you, I will put in the show notes as well. And we kind of paused in your journey there before we wrap up.
Let's wrap that up a little bit. So with that all said, we moved to Texas and we purchased some short-term rentals here as well as, one that's like 5.5 hours away. And again, I I think it's one of those, when you start to analyze enough properties, you start to know what to look for. And when there was this one really gem of a property that's really changed so much for us. I mean, truly, one short-term rental could easily replace your job and your income. I mean, we have one property right now that generates easy 6,000 a month cash flow net. Like, that's just one, you know? And like, just think if you have, yes, it's a short-term rental.
Right.
And we just, I mean, we got it for such an amazing day. It was one of those, it came up and I even put an offer before, you know, before even seeing it, before anybody else, like, I just like, I knew it. And I was like, that's the one. And I put it in because again, I had been doing so much research and looking in the area for several months. And I knew at that point, I was like, even though it was more money and more of the budget than I initially was thinking I wanted to spend, but I just adjusted things on the other side because we were looking for 3 properties. I was like, you know what? This is going to be my one I spend more money on. And I'm okay with that
Okay.
because I knew that it had so much potential. And sure enough, it just did incredible. And we did kind of take a little bit, I guess, in a sense, a little bit of a risk or a jump because knowing we were going to buy that property and it needed some work. And again, my husband's super good at being hands-on. And before he's always balanced like work, his job, and this. But it was really at that time we finally were like, there is a point where it was like, this job is just not a healthy place to be. And it is worth,
Yeah.
we had enough established that we were like, okay, I don't think we're going to be sinking if you quit. And actually, I think your time put into this property is going to be worth more than you staying in it and, that sort of thing. So for us, it just made sense. We prayed about it and we're like, yes, this is it. So last March 2nd, I think, was his last day at his corporate job. And he dove right into it with me with this business. And then we launched it and that one just took off. Then we got another one and that took off. And it was just, it's just been a snowball of a process, but to where now we're making over $10,000 a month. And I work a few hours a week to manage that. And that is it. I have all my systems in place. But again, this was a 3-4 year process now, right?
Right.
So it
And I
doesn't
love
happen overnight.
and I love that you shared so much goodness of that. And I want to wrap it up soon. Let me ask you one quick question, with what you
Sure.
just said about the short term, midterm, because that's a big thing going on in this world where the short
Yeah.
terms are changing and restrictions. And
Mhm.
where would you send people to check their area to say, like you said, you did your research for a few months and got to know an area, which I think is
Yep.
great. But how do you know for sure that when you get that property, you'll be able to short-term rental or midterm or
Yep. So you just call the county in that area or the city assessor or city tax assessor, whatever. You just call the city or the county and you call them and literally ask, okay, what are your restrictions for short-term rentals? Do you have to have permits? Like, what's the setup? And they will tell you because that is truly the best way to do it because they will tell you that's exactly 100% like you have to follow their guidelines because
That's great.
any other city, like each city is different, right, on their restrictions or what they allow. And so you just literally have to just go call the city. You just Google it, like city, assessors or city, for property, like wherever people submit property taxes to information. And you just give them a call. If you call the wrong person, they'll just tell them what you're trying to find and they'll send you to the next person. Like, you just find that person and then they will tell you what is allowed and how to do it.
Perfect.
When we called the county in this, or our property, it was actually, even though it's like close to everything, it looks like it's in the city. It's technically county. I called and there's like nothing. Like, we don't have nothing. You can do whatever you want. It's unrestricted. So we can do whatever we want. The other one is in a small HOA and in the city. But again, like they had no issues with furnished mid-term rentals, by the way. Those typically fall outside of your normal short-term rental requirements. And so if it's 30 days or more, most cities will allow you to do that without any additional permitting or anything like that. It's the short terms that are, they tend to have a little bit extra. Sometimes you have occupancy taxes, which is through the city so that they can get a little extra money, obviously from it. So yeah, you just do that. And once you figure that out, you move forward and if you decide that it's still worth it, you do it. It's not a bad thing to still pursue a short-term rental, even if there's city regulations and ordinances. I mean, obviously there's some that have like completely banned it and you can't do that. But the ones that are have some, ordinances, it's not anything to be scared of or to run away from. It's just, you just need to know what you need to know to set it up right. It's like any business. Like sometimes you need to have a business certificate and license to be able to do business in the city that you're in. That's just part of the process. So just get it done and you can set it up and you're good to go.
So most important, just do your research.
It
Do
is.
your
It's
research.
all about research.
Yes.
Yep. It really is.
So Rachel, listen, I know that we got to wrap this up, but I just want to say thank you. You've given us great information and opened up your whole journey, which has been super helpful. And honestly, I might call you back at some point.
Yeah. Happy to do a round too.
Even yes, that would be wonderful. So thank you for being here. Best of luck with your journey, and I'm excited. And I will continue following it because I love your Instagram feed and all that you're doing because you give great tips there. So
I appreciate it. Yeah, I will.